This time, Jack spent 30 minutes and 23 seconds to complete the race. Although it wasn't the same as the record that he'd set before, that was due to the fact that the car that he'd used this time was inferior in terms of speed. Had the maximum speed of the car been higher, it was a sure bet that he would have broken the record that he'd previously set. The more familiar he got with the road, the more tactics he could use to make sure that he used the shortest time possible to reach the finish line. The crowd cheered even more. For the first time, ever since Ben began racing against the younger generation of Confrontation City, he'd been defeated. Furthermore, he'd been badly defeated. After all, they could see on the screen that Ben had already given up on the race. He was driving at a normal speed, and it was estimated that he would reach the finish line in about 20 minutes. The moment that the crowd saw how the car was turning at the bends, they immediately knew who the driver was. It was their driving deity, Jack. After all, there was nobody that had ever been here that had dared to do something crazy like that other than Jack. Most of the people present, if not 99% of them, were all residents of Confrontation City. This time, the roars and shouts of praise echoed on Mount Bright again. This time, it was even louder considering the fact that the spectators were more than happy as the reputation of their city had been saved. What's more, there were at least 40% more people than there were on Friday night. There were some that didn't have a place to seat at all. On this day, Peter surely made a good amount of money. After all those that attended had to pay a little fee. This money was what was used for maintenance of the equipment that was used here, as well as prize money and salaries for those that were working here. The more races were held, the higher the amount of money that the off-track racers received. After parking the Ferrari Roma, Jack got out accompanied by a panting William. This guy was scared silly when he experienced how the car turned and drifted firsthand. Those looking from the side would obviously not have the feeling of drifting or being inside a car that threatened to overturn. So, although William thought that it was fun, this time, he was forced to respect George as he had managed to stay in a car that was driven a higher speed. William, tell me, how is it? Andrew asked the moment that Duo came out of the car. You better not wish to try it out. I was almost scared to sing myself. William said as he took a few deep breaths. Is it that scary? Or are you playing a prank on us so that you can be the only one to experience Jack's driving? Ismail asked as he eyed William suspiciously. The others also had the same thought in their minds. You guys can try it out yourselves if you get a chance. But I won't dare to do that ever again. Jack is a freak when it comes to driving. William waved the group off the moment that he saw that they weren't believing his words. The group looked at William before shifting their gazes towards Jack. They were quite curious about Jack's driving. Upon observing Jack, he looked normal. They wondered if the two had been in the same car or not. Jack didn't know the reason for the strange gazes, but he ignored them and decided to wait for Ben to finish the race. Currently, it was already 11 in the night. Since he had an appointment the following day, he had to make sure that he slept well. Otherwise, how was he going to hold a meeting of the upper management of the grocery department? So, he wanted this guy to finish the race faster so that he could receive the rewards that he was supposed to get. He found a place and sat alongside the group. About 20 minutes later, Ben finally arrived. After parking the car, he didn't alight from it. Instead, he continued sitting inside it. Just as they were thinking that he won't come down from the car, the door opened and Ben got out. His current expression was completely opposite of what it was just an hour ago. The arrogance had completely disappeared. His eyes seemed lost, but deep inside, if a person observed keenly, he would see that there was sadness as well as anger. Though sadness dominated the emotion that was deep inside his eyes, William and the others didn't care about his feelings at all. After all, he never cared about theirs after he'd won the race against them. He would always taunt them and say that they should quit racing considering the fact that their skills weren't on par. Ha ha ha, young Master Ben, what happened there? TSK. I thought that young Master was a pro. It turned out that he couldn't even compete at all. A 20 minutes range, that's too much. Right. Even when he defeated us back then, it was always a range of at most a minute. Young Master Ben, you claimed to be the best driver not long ago. Now, here's a real pro. Can you even compare? Hey guys, don't make our young Master Ben so agitated. He may fail to fulfill his end of the bet. Now that you remind me of that, I almost forgot that he owes me $5 million. The group kept on taunting Ben, making sure that all the anger that they had accumulated over the years that Ben had been suppressing them was vented out. Of course, it wasn't just William's group that was making a commotion. Ben's flunkies couldn't hold it back anymore and began attacking with words. You better stop throwing your mouth there. Why are you so smug as if you're the one that won the race? That's right. Do you think that you're so awesome? If not for Jack, do you think that your inchoate city can compare to our blue city? Humph, you guys are cheating. You knew all the well that Jack is an expert. Yet, you still planned the race. Right, that's cheating. We don't agree to this. William and the others were also fierce. But they became even more fierce the moment that they heard the flunkies talking about Jack. What did you just say right now? Can you repeat it again? I want to hear you clearly. Did you just say that we're only depending on Jack? Ben aside, all of you, come and race with me. We depend on Jack, and you depend on Ben. Everything is fair and square. Who's that idiot saying that we're cheating? If I remember correctly, this race was proposed by your young master Ben. So stop shifting blames. You don't accept the results? Then talk to off-track racers about that. Your young master already signed a contract. The videos of Jack's racing were all over the internet since Friday. If you didn't see them, that's your own fault. That's right. Even the name was there. It was stated clearly that the driver was named Driving Deity Jack. Were your eyes blind, or were your ears deaf? Maybe both. Hey, I think that Ben saw the video before the race. I think that sharp-nosed guy is the one that showed him the video. The commotion was so big in that it was only a little away from fighting. All of them knew that fighting here was prohibited. Furthermore, if they dared to fight here, the police would surely do their job well, as there were some that were stationed here for cases like this. Stop it, all of you. At this time, Ben, who had been standing there listlessly, finally spoke. He looked at his flunkies and they immediately shrank their necks. On the other hand, when he glared at William and the others, they returned the glare with their own. After taking a deep breath, Ben walked towards Jack step by step. He looked calm now, but the veins that were popping up on his forehead as well as his red eyes showed how angry he was. As he faced the enraged Ben, Jack didn't have a change in expression. Apart from the fact that fighting here was prohibited, he himself was not a weakling. Although he hadn't practiced fighting techniques, his body was fit enough. He went to the gym on a daily basis. So it was obvious that he was strong. His training was balanced, making his muscles proportionate. So he was not afraid of some young master that didn't practice at all. You got me this time, kid. I never thought that a professional in racing like you would try bullying someone like me. Ben said. His tone was cold. Jack raised his brows and said, Young Master Ben, if I remember correctly, this race was proposed by you, right? As for why I accepted, although I knew that you won't be able to defeat me, isn't the answer in the open? You provoked me first. You know, at first, I just wanted a race with a small bet. But the moment that you insulted me, that was the moment that you made me decide to punish you a little. Jack finished. A little? Are all the shares in my hand plus $150 million that small to you? Ben shouted. Yeah, something like, you'll hand over all of your family assets is considered big, don't you think so? Jack asked in return. Ben gritted his teeth in anger. After a moment, he took a deep breath as he tried calming down. He didn't want to start going physical only to suffer more than he'd already. At this moment, the two sides were facing each other. Those that didn't participate in the race were only observing from the side without saying a word. I'll fulfill one end of my bet today. As for the other one, transferring shares needs time. In 3 days, I'll transfer them over. Ben said as he headed towards the management office. He then stopped for a moment and looked at Jack before saying coldly, You've won this time. But better not be proud of it. This is not over. Jack didn't take Ben's threat seriously at all. There was law in the country, and if he dared to play underhanded tricks on him, he won't let him off at all. After all, how could he just remain silent when someone was attacking him? This time, he had targeted Ben himself. But if he dared to continue trying to look for trouble with him, he would ensure that he would take his backing down. In just a month, as long as he put in some effort, he was sure that he would reach that level soon. Currently, he can earn at least $1 million from the stores a day. If it was multiplied, he would end up earning more than $100 million a day. As he thought to this point, he decided to start a security company next. It won't be a small one at all. It would have to be big. If possible, he wanted to make sure that he bought one that was already running. The reason for this was considering the fact that hiring a new management team and trying to enter the market would be somehow difficult. So it would be better to get one that was already running. Furthermore, if there was a problem with the management, he would just make a few changes and that would be it. He nodded to himself before turning his attention to the group. William and the others nodded and followed him towards the management office. They each had a smile on their faces, ready to receive their own small incomes. The moment that they arrived in the management office, they found that Ben had just finished making a call. He hung up and stared at them. Without another word, he turned around and left. Jack raised a brow, but he did nothing. After all, what could he do in this kind of situation? So he immediately entered the office. Peter saw them coming inside. He smiled at Jack. Even today, although the car that Jack had driven was inferior to the one before, he had seen that his performance was better than previous time that he was here. "Mr. Jack, any considerations?" Peter asked as he motioned for Jack to sit. There were only 2 chairs inside Peter's office. So, Jack sat and the other one was left for the lady, Kelly, to sit on it. "That's my decision for now. But maybe I may change my mind in the future." Jack shook his head. He would just buy this off-track racers in the future if he wanted to participate in racing. As for why he wasn't being direct and saying that he won't be participating in the racing as their genius, it was obvious that a person wasn't supposed to burn bridges. He might need Peter's help in the future after all. "Okay then, I'll wait for that future." Peter smiled bitterly as he shook his head. After a moment, he began typing on the computer on his desk. "So, the accounts remain the same?" he asked with his head still lowered. "Yes," everyone replied in unison. Peter was asking if the money was going to be transferred into the same accounts as the ones that they had used to pay for registration. After about a minute, Jack felt the phone in his pocket vibrate. Even without taking it out, he knew the reason behind the vibration as he had already received a system prompt. "You've earned $102 million. Multiplier replied. "You've received $10.2 billion. Now, his account had enough money for him to solidify the grocery department as well as get a good security company. He already knew why he received the $2 million. It was from the off-track racers, reward for the winner. William and the other 15 received their own $5 million one by one. Their expressions right now was like that of a small child that had received what he wanted. After confirming that everything was in position, they left the office. Jack drove back to the Prince and Princess Palace. It was already 11:30 at night. The road was almost empty, so the Bugatti Veyron buzzed through the roads at high speeds. Of course, he made sure to be careful on the road. Although it was almost midnight, he knew that the roads wouldn't be empty. As for the traffic police, he made sure to avoid them by using the less congested roads. But his speed on the road wasn't the same as the one during the race. Here, he maintained a lower speed of about 130 miles per hour. He slowed down whenever necessary. After getting to the palace, he took a shower before sleeping. After all, there was much work for him to do the following day. The following morning, he woke up at around 7. He went into the gym and did a few warm-up exercises before taking a shower and preparing himself a sumptuous breakfast. By the time that he got out of the mansion, it was already 3 minutes past 9. The sun wasn't that hot yet, but he was in no mood to enjoy it. He took out his phone and made a call. After waiting for a few breaths, the call connected and a male voice came through. "Good morning, Mr. Jack." "Morning, Chris. Has everything been arranged?" Jack asked as he headed towards the Bentley Continental GT. "Yes, Mr. Jack. Everything is in position. We're only awaiting for your arrival." Chris replied. "That's good. I'll be there by 10:40. Oh, by the way, prepare an extra seat as there's someone else coming with me." Jack said a few more words before hanging up. After getting into the Bentley Continental GT, he was just about to drive away when he thought of something. The Flyers bank manager. He was sure that this guy had some connections. So, he was sure that he could help him in getting a good security company for him to buy. At the thought of this, he decided that he would go to the bank after he was done with the issue of the grocery department. Without wasting more time, he immediately drove towards the Glaze Hotel. Happy residential area, Dante family main mansion, inside a study room. Kevin looked at the report in his hands with a frown on his face. He had been holding this file for over 5 minutes now, but his gaze remained lingering on a single page. On this page, there was an image that Jack would surely find it familiar. It was his image. Below the portrait, there were a few details about him. None of them was wrong. It stated his full names, his age, his educational background, when he arrived here in Inchoate City, and a few more pieces of information about him. Kevin's gaze was currently fixated on Jack's full name. Jackson Alfonso. They didn't manage to find the details of where he was born and what his family background was. "Uncle Reuben, are you sure that this young man is not from Crystal City's Alfonso family?" Kevin asked as he looked at Reuben, who was standing not far from his position. Kevin himself was a middle-aged man with a few strands of gray hair on his head. Though, one had to be keen to be able to see them. "Actually, I'm not too sure about it myself. According to what I know, any member of Alfonso family has a good position in the family business. But Jack, on the other hand, doesn't hold any position. Reuben stated with a frown on his old face. After a moment of pause, he continued, but for him to be able to pay for that building, this implies that he has money. But we know money alone isn't enough to protect someone. But what makes me a little worried is the fact that according to the information, he seemed to be familiar with the young lady of Gravy family. The moment that Kevin heard these words, his facial expression tightened for a moment. Then, he let out a sigh as he placed the file on the desk. He rubbed his forehead for a moment as he sighed again. After a moment, he looked at Reuben and said, "It seems that we'll have to be careful. Since the building is gone, let's change the plan if necessary. But we have to make sure that another plan is ready within a month at most. As for that Jack, continue investigating his movements. If possible, check his accounts. I want to know his depths," Kevin instructed. "Yes, master," Reuben replied before leaving the study room. Back to Jack. After more than 20 minutes of driving, he arrived in front of the Glaze Hotel. He parked the car in the underground parking lot and decided to wait for Seline on the first floor. Unexpectedly, the moment that he arrived there, he found that Seline was there together with Faith. He raised his brows. He had thought that they would be meeting at 10. Unexpectedly, he found that she was here already. Well, not that it was bad. It would be good if he could finish all the projects at hand as fast as possible. After all, why would he want to delay his development? Good morning. The moment that he got to the two ladies, Jack greeted like a gentleman that he was. Morning, Seline and Faith replied. Now that they had gotten acquainted to each other, there were no more standoffs like the previous times that they had met. Jack couldn't help but be impressed by Celine's beauty. This time, her black hair was tied into a ponytail. Her face had a shallow layer of makeup. The dress that she was wearing this time was a short-sleeved green dress that matched the color of her eyes. This dress reached below her knees. Jack could only appreciate the beauty of this lady in this outfit, as, although it was an official dress, it still accentuated her features. "I thought that you were going to pick me up at 10? Seline asked amusedly. "I had to get here earlier just in case there would be traffic," Jack replied. "Can we go now?" Seline asked as she stood up from the couch. "Well, are the both of you going?" "If so, we'll have to get another car as mine can only carry a single passenger," Jack stated.